Today, vibe coding is the big thing. Everybody's trying to come up with a new product, especially with AI. It's gotten a lot easier to develop new products, add AI specialties, and do all kinds of cool things. But how do you actually validate the idea before you start building it? This session is all about figuring out how to validate your idea. We're going to go through a step-by-step process to figure out if an idea is worth it to build or not. I'm also going to give you access to a playbook that you can use to validate your ideas and also make the whole process a lot easier. So if you're a founder, developer, or even a project manager, you want to stick around and watch the entire episode because it's a lot of information you're going to find useful. And as always, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. So the goal of this lecture is to show you a kind of a workflow, a framework that you can use to validate your idea. And these are things that I have learned over the years, and I've combined it being part of an accelerator I live in Ontario, Canada. And so there's a university here called York University, and they have a division called White Space, and I've been part of that. And I thought I've been looking around and seeing so many people who are getting into the startup space, and I thought this would be really good to kind of put out there and for people to learn. So we're going to jump right into it. My name is Saul, and as far as AI tools, I do tend to teach a lot about AI on Maven, and I thought just to kind of bring a little bit of AI in here as well. Um, my favorite research tools are Perplexity and U.com especially. So if you are doing a little bit of vibe coding, this shouldn't be very hard for you. You just connect to their API. They actually give you some tokens for free, but it's really good for like analyzing large volume data, like way more than Perplexity. And U.com will sometimes look at 70 to like 100 websites and give you answers, and especially good for third-party market secondary research. Um, so I guess you're SaaS account executive on career break. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, vibe coding has made it a lot easier. A lot of people are coming into the game. And so and part of that is a bit of a concern. So once you have this stuff, once you've done your research, the framework I'm going to show you, you can actually use Claude or you can use ChatGPT. And if you're using Claude, I recommend Cowork because you can save all the stuff on the desktop. And if you're not familiar with Cowork, I did do a session just yesterday on it, so you can actually go and watch the recording on that and learn how to work with Cowork. But Cowork keeps everything organized on your desktop because this is a long journey and you're going to learn a lot. And you want your AI to be up to date and have memory on the subject. So sometimes these things can get lost and disorganized. So you can use AI to help you. If you're using ChatGPT, you can basically pick one of their project folders and just work out of there and keep everything organized. So your AI is up to date on what you're doing. All right. Okay, let's jump in. All right. All right. Hold on, what's going on? Okay, for some reason I was not able to move. There we go. Now we can. All right. Today's agenda, I'm going to talk about POC, proof of concept, importance of that. We're going to talk about a little bit of theory, and then we're going to go into practical. The theory part is going to focus on just the overall concept, especially for someone who has never heard of this idea before. It might be a bit of like a shock to them. So let me just kind of break it down to what I think. I believe it's in a scientific experiment. It runs like a scientific experiment. And then we're going to go into practical. And I'm going to start with an idea, with an example. It's going to be a restaurant. It's going to be Bob's Restaurant. And we're going to basically build a playbook. And I'll show you what that playbook is going to look like. And then at the end, you're going to have the resources to then build your own playbook. And you're going to download it. I'll send it as an email. But these are basically the contents of the playbook. We have concept validation, we have a problem statement, we have a value proposition statement, we have a value proposition canvas. These canvases are super helpful for making sure that you're solving the right problem and you're building the right product for the right customers. And then we have a lean canvas for your business model, customer journey map, super important to understand. And then we have some OKRs. I'll talk about what those are. And then that's basically our playbook. Okay. All right, let's get started. So, quick little story. I have a friend of mine. He is sort of like the idea guy. He likes to come up with an idea and he'll come up to you and be like, "Hey, we should. I think of this business idea. I want to come and do this like a Windows." The other day he wanted to do screens for restaurants and or other types of businesses. And then the other day he came an idea. It's like, oh, I think this would be a really good idea to do dried fruit. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I already ordered the machines to dry the fruit, and I'm gonna see if I can sell this. Like just really just jumping into the idea without really understanding what the idea is. And I want to lay out here in front of you what ends up happening when you don't do enough research on the concept and you don't do concept validation. So we got a little story here. We're in a fictitious kind of city, and this gentleman named Bob wants to open up a restaurant. And his customer, we're going to pick one data point. His name is Joe. Joe maybe represents a lot of different types of customer, maybe a customer segment you want to say, but Joe is a type of customer. Our town that we're basically putting this restaurant is more of like the village that has a lot of factories, and most people work in the factory. And so for Bob, um, sorry, for Joe, his need as someone who wants to grab lunch in between work, his particular needs are it needs to be fast, it needs to have options, the place that he purchases food from has options, and it needs to be cheap. Notice the order that I have put this in. That it needs, for his number one priority, that it needs to be fast. And his second thing, it needs to be option. So he might be prioritizing fast over cheap. That's very important. Now, Bob has decided that he is really good in cooking and he wants to, he has this vision about making this amazing restaurant with amazing food. And so he goes out there and without actually researching his idea, he starts to offer this to the 50-mile radius that he can serve. And this would be like really great food. And let's say in this fictitious situation, he goes and gets certified as a Michelin star restaurant, and now he's got the best food in town. His offer is basically to customers this. This is the best food in town. It's got options. We have a lot of options. Our menu is filled and it's affordable. So for the food, the quality that you're getting is pretty cheap, but our service is fairly slow because it takes time to make really good food. And so this is not an offer that is bad. This is not an offer that is there's no value. But as you can see right now, there's a bit of a mismatch between what the customer actually wants than what the offer is actually is going out there. So as a result, what happens is that Joe comes and says, I don't have enough time to wait for this the service that you're offering when I'm coming between shifts, or even after my shift where I got to drive an hour to get home because of traffic to wait for your food. So they don't end up coming as much. And so because Bob did not do the research, they're not able to sell as much and do an exchange for product and basically get paid for the work that they did to build this restaurant. The other things that ends up, so this is very important. And so what are some of the questions that Bob should have done? Is he should have go out there in the market, into the city, and before they even put together a restaurant, ask questions like this. What do you like to eat? How long are you willing to wait? How much are you willing to pay? What are what's most important when it comes to you making a decision to where to eat? Wouldn't it be a very different restaurant if they have done this before they sat down and just in their own mind come up with an idea of what they think this restaurant should be? And so this is where we're going is that doing the research is very important because another thing could happen here as well is that what's called sort of a fake product market fit. The term product market fit, if you're not familiar, means that you have a match between the offer and the need of the customer. When you have found that match, you will find that customers start finding you and you start to grow very rapidly. You don't have to try very hard. And so imagine, for instance, the moment that Bob did this, the plants went on strike. And so Joe wasn't working as much. And right around that time, when they open up, Joe starts coming because he doesn't have this fast requirement anymore. So he starts coming in. But again, this world right now we are in, it's abnormal. Normally the factories are running, but they're on strike. So you get this situation where basically Joe, it looks like Bob has found product market fit, but not really. Because when the normal things come into play, Joe doesn't come as much anymore. And so basically, Joe is one data point, but this is what we call customer segments. And these are different types of customer segments that have maybe different types of needs. And that's why the research is important. So that was the whole point of this. Is just I want to show you that very important to do the research so you don't, not only do you not offer what the customers, but you actually find the fake product market fit. Okay. So we're going to jump into theory, and this is where we're going to start building on what I just the story and build. And I want you to remember Bob's story because we're going to be building on this as we go. So the 5 questions before you build anything is these that I've laid out here. These have to be as specific as possible. One of the things I got drilled so much on is when I answered this is they would say, well, why? And so the best way to answer these questions is to keep asking why, like that annoying kid that we see in movies where it just says why, to the point where it's very clear as to why you should be doing that. Now, the answers to these questions are not things that you like. It's based on the research that you have done throughout your journey. It's not that, what problem should I solve is because this is the problem I feel like solving. It's the problem that the customers have. And so who is the buyer and the user? The buyer is the one who's paying. The user is the one who's actually using it. So when you're going out to sell your product, you have to understand, are you talking to a user or the buyer? Obviously, you want to talk to the buyer because the buyer is going to be the one in making an economical decision whether or not this is a problem worth solving. Fine. And is it a big enough problem for them? Right? So another one is what should I do? And what should it look like? What should it look like? It should look like what the customers want it to look like, not what you necessarily think it to look like. Now, just as a caveat on that, yes, it is important to put in your taste in things, but it should always match what the customer requires. And that's really the point of this slide here. Okay? I'm going to move on to this. This is my favorite slide here that I want to show you. Finding product market fit, PMF, is like a scientific experiment. And it goes through this journey that I'm going to show you here. Zoom out a little bit. You guys can see this, right? So we start with a hypothesis. This is the idea. This is Bob saying, I want to open up a restaurant. Now, when he thinks of this idea, he's going to have some ideas as to what that restaurant should look like. And this is sort of the raw, unproven hypothesis. It's just a set of assumptions. So when I said in the earlier story, when my friend comes up and says, I want to open up, dried fruit business, and he's so sold on it. It's such a good thing that he went and actually bought the equipment. You can't help to say like you're taking the wrong approach, buddy. Like you need to look at it from a point of view. It's like I got this idea, it's a hypothesis. Let me go with it. If someone came up to you and says, I got a hypothesis, you're not going to get excited for it. It's a hypothesis, right? And so when we have an hypothesis, we can start an experiment. And so, and I'll show you in a second how we put together this hypothesis. But once we have an experiment, the experiment starts with talking with customers. How many customers? The recommended is somewhere between 50 to 100 customers. This sounds like a lot, but the way to kind of build that, you can talk to auxiliary customers from it. So for example, I make a product around retail stores. My target buyer or target customer might be the showroom people that are working inside. Let's say it's a retail showroom. I could also talk to the drivers. I could also talk to the people who are handing me the product at the shipping counter. They may not be my direct, but they can help provide some data points because the idea with this stage is to collect a lot of data points. Because once you have all these data points, you have a good idea as to what is happening because you can use that to go to the next stage, and that is building an MVP. And this is where you start vibe coding. And so I see a lot of people is when they have an idea, they jump on the computer and vibe code. And you miss this very important step is you need to go out there and collect data. When you have an MVP, the point of an MVP is to test
your customers, testing customers. And the MVP is a sort of a type of product is not designed to be to test your final idea of what this thing is going to look like. It is a mini version of it. So in the case of our restaurant example, Bob wouldn't go and lease a location, open up a restaurant as an MVP. He's going to start a catering company, a small mini catering company, and he's going to want to test some assumptions he's made about what he wants to offer the customers using that. And he's going to do it very kind of like for a short period of time. Okay. So then once we have tested, we're going to test things in a way that we can measure it. And once you can measure it, you can then have some data out of that and to use into the next experiment that you can. That's why there's one, two, three, four, five, because this loop goes on and on and on until you get to a point of a discovery. And discovery is a point where when you present it and it's like this aha moment when the customer is like, oh yeah, this is amazing. This is so much better than what we already or what we're doing. Yeah, I would love to work with this. Like this is and it's not just one, a multiple. And so at this point is when Bob should be like, all right, guys, we know what we're doing. We know what we should be offering for customers and we've tested it. Let's go invest. And this is where it gets much easier to even get an investor to on board because you can have all this report to show what you've done to be able to get. But as an investor, why would anybody invest when you have not produced a report? So this is why it's a scientific experiment because this is your Nobel Prize point. You've discovered something very valuable, and it's extremely hard to do. And it's so easy for me to sit here, even to say to you guys, and like because it really really is hard. And so you have to put a lot of time into it, and it takes a lot and it takes a lot of effort, and it's a lot takes a lot of disappointment along the way as well. But you cannot skip this, and that's what I've learned very very importantly. So I'm going to move on to the next section. So I'll say one more thing here. This is what I have. No amount of hype, no amount of LinkedIn bragging that we see everywhere. None of those things are going to get to replace this stuff. Because if you open up the hood and none of this is done, it's just hype at the end of the day. Okay, moving on. All right, let's get to some practical stuff. All right. So the first thing I want to start with is concept validation. This word, you'll see it in almost every startup place that you go. Very important. It's based on understanding the customer's problem and solving the right problem. A concept validation is about a business model that has a business case. It is, if you are solving a problem that doesn't make money, it is not a business. It's something else, but it's never not a business. A business has one objective is to make a profit. And if it's not doing that, it is there's a problem that needs to be figured out. And so one of the first places to think about is what's the problem I'm solving, and the questions you want to ask is how I've categorized this here is how do we look at this problem and evaluate if this is a good concept to even try to solve. The first thing is frequency. Is this a frequent enough problem that's happening? The reason SaaS exists is because the problem they're solving is frequent. There's no way a SaaS business model would exist without a frequent item, right? So this allows you to bring in recurring revenue and it makes sure that it's not a once a year problem that they got to solve. All right. So that's the thing. An example would be like someone who builds a house that is, for that particular customer, that's not a recurring problem, right? That's once maybe 5 years, who knows, 10 years, that they might change houses or whatnot. But a restaurant, in our Bob's example, is a frequent problem that you got to solve. So that's not bad, right? We got that checked off. Costly or time consuming, worth their attention. Everything can be costly. Everything can be time consuming. You can justify it anyone. Is it worth it? If it's not worth it, they're not going to want to spend money purchasing a solution for it. If it's something that they can ignore or shove under the rug, it's not that important. So this is very important as well to make sure that it is something that's worth their attention. And you can use that to get their attention, especially in early days. The next thing is affects a lot of people Being niche in the beginning is a good thing. It allows you to target a certain group of people and get attention quickly because it's basically clumped into one area and you can test things very quickly. It gives you the ability, but this is not a long-term solution. It needs to be a problem that you can then scale into the general market. And so and that's really where the profit is going to come into place, right? Because you need a lot of customers. Critical to fix. Um, there's two types of products out there. Maybe there's a third one, but for most people, people talk about two. Either it's a vitamin or it's a painkiller. And you want to try to be closer to a painkiller. Because if it's a vitamin, it means it's a nice to have. And nice to haves are not easy to convince. And as a startup, when without a lot of marketing budget, you need to have a strong enough foothold on the customer's problem to be able to convince them this is something that works. So if it's critical fit, you should be able to demonstrate that. All right. And the other thing is solutions exist. Other solutions exist. People sometimes hate competitors. Competitors are amazing to have competitors because it means that there is a problem, other people are making money solving it, and it gives you an opportunity to compare your solution to theirs when you're sitting down with the customer and talking with them. If there's no solution out there right now, it means the problem has not been discovered. Then it means that you have to have the budget to be able to educate the customers on the problem, and that's a very, very expensive thing to do. And if you don't have the budget, forget about it. Or okay, you're gonna spend a long time trying to do that. I've been there. I've had a beverage business that it just didn't work because of this. Is because I became like very I tried to propose something that was like not the normal thing in the market. The other thing has to be measurable. The problem has to be measurable because if you're doing a meeting with the customer and you can't measure the problem that it's causing for them, you cannot convince them very easily. And you should haphazard, um, and things that you cannot measure is not worth it. So make sure these criteria are there when you're assessing whether or not there's going to be a business case or not for your problem. And I have this example here, this little picture. It's supposed to be funny, but it's like a guy who's really in love with his wife, and he's doing everything he wants to do for her, but he doesn't really know what her problem is. Um, I hope it makes sense in some ways. But what I'm trying to address here is that you don't want to be in a situation where you're doing everything you can to make the customer happy. Um, the guy's sweating. It looks like he's got a couple of days left before he lives. This is way too much work. In the beginning, you need to find one or two things that you want to focus on to solve a problem. Once you have done a very good job at doing that, and then you can build systems up that address other things so you don't fall in this situation. So the thing here is not about like the fact that he's doing everything and don't do everything to make your customer happy, but start somewhere and build on it so you don't end up stressed out like this. Okay, so that was the whole point. I hope that was funny. Okay, moving on. So, components of a startup playbook. Now we're going to build the playbook. Now you have some basic understanding of why this is important. I hope I sold you on it. I'm going to talk about the playbook. I divide this playbook that I'm going to show you guys into three categories. We have the problem statement, we have the value proposition. It's going to be a statement as well. We have three forms that we're going to fill out. It's going to be the value proposition canvas. We have the lean canvas. We have the customer journey map, and then we have a OKR table. Don't worry about what they mean. You're going to learn them in the next few minutes. But just remember, I have them in these three categories. Okay, we're going to start with the first one. We're going to use Bob's Restaurant as an example. This will help us to really understand what I mean. To build a problem statement, you need to answer these four questions. Who has the problem? What is the problem? When and where is the problem occurring? So the context of that problem is important. And why is important to address? What are the implications of this problem? So in our case, I've put together this. statement here for our restaurant. Factory workers doing shift work struggle to find fast, affordable, filling meals with enough variety during short lunch breaks after work and after work. Solving this matter, this is the implication, is because if Bob's Diner can match their schedule, budget, need for convenience, it can become their repeat go-to spot for lunch, family takeout, after shift. Um, this is very important to put this lecture together. Obviously, you can probably tell I used AI to help me with me. This is a good thing. This is an example, but when you are building your problem statement value, you'd be surprised how AI can be helpful. However, keep in mind, it's very naive. So when it puts together a statement, make sure you give it the right context that is based on the research that you've done, so it doesn't give you a naive answer because it just doesn't know the world like the way we do, right? So that's very important. Next, we have our value proposition statement that is built on this problem statement. And the value proposition statement focuses on the target customer, the statement of need for that target customer, the product category in which your product fills in, and the statement of benefit that it provides this customer. And we write this statement, it gives to allow us to do the next step, which is all those canvases that I talked about, those forms that we without this it's very hard. And this does take some time. You need to sit down, think about it, and all that kind of stuff. When we are doing this, we are still building our hypothesis. This is not part of that experiment portion flow that I talked about. We are still trying to validate whether or not this is a good idea. And so here's an example for um, the Bob's Diner there. I said for factory workers doing shift work, we need fast, affordable, filling meals that fit short breaks and long work days. Our product is a neighborhood diner that serves quick, cheap, satisfying food with enough variety for lunch, family takeout, and after shift meals and dinner. Okay, this is everything that we need to address here is addressed here. This is for you to make sure that you are on the right track when you are building your your canvases. Okay, and that's what we have here. All right, the first one is the value proposition canvas. Just out of curiosity, how many people in the chat have made one of these before? Just throw a thumbs up or like a yes or no in the thing in the chat, just so I can see if you want to write something. Anybody? Nobody. Everybody's just saying, I've not heard of it. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so this is what I'm sometimes people have never heard of it. Some people have used it before. If you've used it, maybe you've kind of know a little bit about it. And it can be maybe you heard it in a way that is the way I would describe it. I think I'm gonna do a better job explaining it than anyone else because I've made many of these. And sometimes people who are talking about it, they're just lectures. So, value proposition canvas is is a concept of matchmaking. Think of it like matchmaking. Here is the customer. Here is the business and its offering. We are trying to make a match made in heaven between these two entities. Over here, the customer has some things that they consider gains for them, some things that they consider pains for them. And they have some jobs, some activities that they have to do in order to fulfill their needs. Okay. The gains are things that they hope to achieve by interacting with with this business. And the pains are the things that they hope to alleviate. They don't want they, either inside themselves by interacting with this business. Okay. And the jobs is the activities that they have to do in order to get them to interact with this. So again, think of it like matchmaking. On the other side, the gain creators is this is the provider. The gain creators are the things that the business creates to address these gains that they have. And the pain relievers are the things that they create to address the pains that they have. As you can see here now, we're starting to see sort of this like match made in heaven, like a marriage almost. That this is these two couples are perfect for each other, right? And the product or services are the things that they're using to then do those things as well. Okay, so going to Bob's Diner as an example, we'll start here and work this way. The customer's job is to get lunch fast, bring home dinner, and relax after work. Very simple. You can get as detailed as you want. I'm keeping it simple. That's some of their jobs. What are some of their gains? Their gains are things that like they would really like it. Orders are quick. That would be a super good thing for them. Meals feel worth it. They're affordable. And Bob, like the restaurant they're looking to get their service from is Bob's becomes a regular spot. It's another bonus, another gain for them. What are the pains? The pains that they experience are breaks are short. I don't have enough time. That's a pain in the ass. Sorry for my language. Behind the butt. Maybe they'll let this out. Food costs too much. It's another pain that they have as well. Menus get boring. That's another pain, right? So we understand the customer from this point of view. As we're building our business, that's why it's so important to do the research in the beginning because you're going to understand all these things. Then when you're building your business, you're going to say, okay, so do you have these gains? I'm going to create those gains for you. No problem. We're going to create ready to serve specials. We're going to create cheap combo meals, and we're going to create a quick pickup ordering. You have pains? We got pain relievers, fast lunch combos, okay? And so that because your breaks are short, family takeout meals that give you options in terms of like cost wise and all that kind of stuff, and dine in and beer, so that you get a lot of options as well. We got the pain relievers. Again, you can list these out as detailed as you want. And the product services that we're going to use to do that is daily rotating specials. Notice I didn't put the menu on here. This is a concept, the concept of a rotating daily special, the concept of hours that fit shifts. We're going to build our hours that fit their shifts. We are here to serve the customer, not serve ourselves. That's what we're trying to. Loyalty rewards for regular, so that they can become regulars at this point. They can feel regulars. And as you zoom out, now you got a match made in heaven. And that's the whole point of the value proposition canvas as we're doing. Okay, moving on. The lean canvas. This is all about your business model. This canvas looks at your business as a whole and also looks at the customers, but is really trying to validate to say, is this a good business to do in at all moving forward? And you do this before you even start building. We'll start with the problem. We already know what the problem is. Workers have short lunch breaks, blah, 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 all that stuff. We have a solution, right? Fast food combos during shifts. We already addressed that in the previous canvas. So you just literally, you're not building this from scratch. You can actually grab some of that information and bring it in. And we build on that. Few things that are very important is the unique value proposition. We had this original value proposition in the beginning, and I didn't say anything about being unique, but as we are filling this form, we want to start to think about how are you going to be unique in some ways relative to what's out there, right? Because there could be another diner down the street offering something similar. How are we going to justify that if we have a conversation, hey, you should come to my diner. Well, why should I come versus that guy? Well, we have this, or we do this. And if we the things that you say should really match what they actually not what you think they should have. And you should understand them so well that when those words come out of your mouth, they are like, oh, nice, yes, that's exactly what I want. Right? That's why that research part is so hard, so time consuming, and so important as well. Unfair advantage. If you were a kid and you had a sibling, and let's say your sibling got like candy and you didn't get candy, you'd be like, oh, that's unfair. Like, why did that, he or she gets candy and I don't? That's what you want your competitors to say, is that it's not fair that they got a location that's so close to the other factories that when they just come out, they walk 5 minutes and that's not fair. And so think about when you're building your product, what are some of the unfair advantages that you can have in your product or business model as a whole that can give you an unfair advantage? McDonald's is in the restaurant industry, but McDonald's has a very unfair advantage because the way they set up their business, the way they make money is through the real estate for the most part. and they make you having to lease the land when you purchase it. Other restaurants don't have this advantage, right? So customer segments. Factory workers on day shift, factory workers on night shift. See how you divide the segments of it could be similar personas of customers, but they fall into different categories and they might have different needs as they come because the day shift might want lunch stuff, the dinner might want, different things. They might have one beer, right? Workers buying dinner for family. That could be another thing, right? You want to make sure that you have stuff that your kids are going to like it if you're going to serve this customer segment. Channels here are the way you're going to find the customer, the way they're going to find you as well. So signs near factories, flyers, right? Loyalty cards. In the case of a digital age right now, it could be like ChatGPT ads because now ChatGPT allows like people are spending more time on ChatGPT, or you figure out that your customer is using a lot of AI tools and AI chat like ChatGPT, so you're going to try to find them through there. That could be an example. Again, it really depends. And key metrics, I talked about why it's so important to measure it. This is where you put it. Because if you can't measure things, you don't know if you're progressing, right? Average lunchtime waits, that's important. Why do we measure this? Because a customer cares about lunchtime waits. That's why we need to measure it. Daily repeat customers, very important for us to make sure that we are building that loyalty, right? Why are we building loyalty? Because the customer cares about loyalty, right? Take out orders after shifts. The customer cares about that. The things we're measuring is what the customer has said is important to them. At the bottom is revenue streams, right? And cost structures. These two are beside each other because they hand in hand. When you're doing some assessments, and by the way, you don't have to do this part too detailed because you're still figuring things out, but at least have an idea that if you're going to charge this much, sorry, if you're going to charge so much for your food, it needs to basically give you enough to cover your expenses and have profit as well, right? But we might have different categories of stuff. So launch combo sales, right? Family takeout orders, beers and silverware. We might categorize our products into these different categories and then say, well, this category brings in this much, this category brings in this much, right? These are the kind of things. So that's what when you zoom out, you got a business model. That's what the point of this is. Okay, that's the lean canvas. Um, and we're also getting there to the end right now, but I want to show you also the customer journey map. So everything has a journey. When you get a job at a company, the journey is job posting is clicked, you apply with your resume, you respond to the request for interview, you attend their interview, you go to the interview, you pass it, you do an assessment, you get the job, you accept the job. There's a journey here. And same as customers who come and use your service, get your product, there's a journey map. And you should know what that map looks like because there's so many touch points that happens. And what we do is in this template here is that we have actions, touch point, thoughts, emotions. Based on our research, we should be able to better understand these. These are not a one-time and fix it. All these forms that I'm showing you is not a one-time thing. You build on these over time as you learn more and more. And then at the bottom, you have pain points and resolutions. Things that kind of go hand in hand is what are the pain points that they experience? What are some so example actions at the awareness stage? Bob sees the diner, right? Evaluation checks the menu, decision, orders lunch, takeout, returns during future shifts. That's retention, right? Touch points, example, road sign, coworker mentions it. That's how they, that's a touch point in terms of awareness. Another touch point is evaluation. The menu these are the tools that we use for evaluation. That's a touch point. Decision, counter, phone, pickup. So you should have a phone line. You should have all these things, right? Loyalty card. You need your loyalty card as a touch point in order to get retention, right? And we just build on these as well as you can see going. And I will share this in the resources, so don't worry about like, oh, I'm gonna miss this or whatever. Or you can take a screenshot if you like. But at the bottom here, let's for instance, there's a pain point at the awareness. What is the pain point at the awareness? Well, they don't know the diner yet. Well, how do we resolve this problem? Clear signs in the factories, right? That's one way to address this awareness. So understanding what the pain points are at these different stages are very important so that you can create resolutions. And again, these are ways for you to take all this messy data that you collected from all these discussions and interviews and whatever, anything you get your hands on, you bring them in and you dump it and you organize it into something. And so this is your first product to then go out and start experimenting. Now, go out there, you start experimenting, and now you're like, okay, I'm going to make an MVP. To make an MVP, here's my suggestion. There's focus on one of the best places to focus on is the competitor. So competitor has two things that that matter. Anything else doesn't matter. Only two things of the competitor that matters is the product and the business model. As I mentioned earlier, McDonald's is in the restaurant business, is a restaurant, but they have a different business model, right? It's a very creative one, right? The competitor's product and the business model, understanding those two things allow you to build something that is not only unique but might have sort of an edge over what they have. Okay, how do we do that? Well, we take what they have. It could be their product or their business model, whatever you think you want to focus on. You break it up into their individual components, the foundation of what it's made from. Okay, and these are the building blocks so that if you were to arrange these back together, you will rebuild this again. Think about it like that. That's what first principle thinking is about. It's about breaking things up into its individual components, their truths, and then if you were to combine them, you can. But you're going to then use these to build versions of them that is a little bit different. And this is where your creativity is going to come in because is this. This is this, but you made a different version of that. And when you are building a product or a different business model, you will combine these in a much different way than you have yourself a product. And so that's what the wanted to address here. And finally, OKR tables. This is so straightforward. The idea here is to give you a sense of accountability. The hardest thing being a founder is that there's no boss. You are the boss. You have to, well, actually, the customer is the boss. But as far as your company is concerned, you are the boss, and you have to be able to motivate yourself and stay accountable to what you're doing. And the OKR table stands for Objective Key Results. That's what OKR stands for, and is used to create these kind of objectives and key results as you can example. So in our Bob's example, speed up lunch service for factory workers. That is one of the objectives that we have to hit. How do we do that? Serve lunch orders under 10 minutes. And we're going to measure that and make sure that we can serve these things. The next one is increase repeat visits from local workers. Very important objective that we can hit. These objectives are critical to the success of the company. Is this not just like I feel like doing this? You don't put like have breakfast on here, right? These are critical, important things that have to happen for the business to succeed. Get paid, get 100 loyal customers, users in the first month, right? You may not hit this, by the way, but at least you tried. And that's really the goal, right? So go after shift, dinner, and beer sales. That's the other thing. And then sell 50 after work meals and drinks. Again, another goal you hit. And you keep building on this. You're gonna cross these off as you go, and over several years, you have achieved a lot, and hopefully you're doing the right things because you never know, right? But you're doing enough research along the way to make sure that you're doing that. So that is it for me, guys.